Cool.
You want to water? Oh, yeah.
I like to smell those things, but we've got one home.
All right, guys. How we doing?
Good.
Who's excited to be here? All right. All right. So tonight's going to be a really interesting one. We are live on Facebook behind you and on YouTube. So if you miss anything, you need to go back and take notes. Absolutely go ahead and do that. Welcome in if you are joining us via Facebook or YouTube on live stream or even after the fact. We're going to be covering some things tonight that are really, really going to be key in you understanding just how your body heals. And so you can see some of the displays. I actually drew this. I feel like being married to an architect has really improved my artistic abilities. We're going to be going through the microbiome tonight and some of the things that affect the microbiome and how that interferes with the healing process or how it contributes to the healing process, depending on how you're looking at it. So from there, we're also going to be jumping into the challenge. So the challenge, it's a 21-day challenge. The girls and I just completed that here and had a blast with it. Honestly, I started out, I wasn't sure because this is actually the first time I've done the advanced plan without dairy. The last few times I've done the challenge, I was doing it with dairy, and dairy actually helps replace a lot of the sugars. But when you're dairy sensitive or casein allergic, just not a good combination. So I'd always done really well up front because of the diuretic effect that dairy ended up having on my digestive system, and then just kind of plateaued out from there and didn't really see a boost to my health at all. You know, there was a little bit of a detox, but that's what happens when you add a toxin to your system. But this time I did it without. And so I didn't see the big drop off right at the beginning. I did a little bit of a detox throughout the whole thing. One of the biggest differences I noticed was I had this fungal rash across my chest before, and it cleared up within the first 2 days. So starving it of the sugar really made a big difference with that. And then on the scale, right, everybody's like, oh, okay, you're doing a diet to lose weight. I need to lose some weight. You know, we just had a baby, and I had the pregnancy weight with my wife. And then I was able to take off about 5 pounds, which really slow. And Wilma and I were talking about this before, and she joined us on the challenge. And so it's really cool to see some of the same stories going through. But I took off 5 pounds, but I lost 3% body fat. So just a really, really great change because I was up around 28% body fat, which is way too much for a guy. Way too much for a guy.
That's not.
Well, some people would like that to be them, but yeah, from where I was to where I needed to be, I was like, come on in, Jen, we're just getting started. So yeah, was able to lose that just a little bit of weight, and I'm going to keep it up. I was talking to my wife over the weekend, and it wasn't too much of an interference for her for me to do the challenge. She actually liked it. She saw my skin clear up a lot. I feel like a lot of my body acne also started to clear up. I've dealt with body acne since I was a teenager, just depending on how clean I eat. Doing better. Now, for me, the transition was actually, I was coming off of gluten-free, dairy-free diet. So I wasn't being a stickler about anything except just avoiding gluten and dairy. And so just kind of cleaning up, adding in those vegetables, cutting down the carbohydrates and switching out the fats made a huge difference for me just from a metabolism perspective and a health perspective in those areas. And that's just after 21 days. Now, 21 days is the amount of time that I think is minimal on any diet for you to start to see an effect. So I fully suspect that by the time we're on the back end of this thing, 4 weeks from now, because the challenge doesn't start today, it doesn't start tomorrow. I want to give you about a week to prepare. We're going to start on Sunday. And we're going to give you guys some resources to go. We're going to print out some challenge sheets for them, right, Christina? Yep, absolutely. She's going to get those for you guys. And then before you guys leave tonight, you can fill them out. Now, anybody can do the challenge. It's an advanced plan challenge, but it's the 5 essentials challenge. We don't go through what that looks like before the end of the evening, but it's a points-based system. So even if you're doing awful, there's no points scored against you. It's only for you. No points scored against you, only for you, because there's enough people in the world that are keeping track of the negative things in your life. We just want to speak positivity and life. So before I jump into the tube, which if you guys didn't catch that, that's what this is. This is just a tube. How did you do, Wilma?
Well, I learned to make breads
Yeah.
out of anything else but refined flours or any of that added sugars and things, and they're delicious.
Yeah.
You can use almond flour, coconut flour. I use tapioca flour, and you mix that in with just baking soda. Just
Yeah.
it looks like a regular yeast dough, but it's really sticky, and it doesn't have to do all that rising time like a lot of it. And then you mix in some good Parmesan cheese in there if you want, even a little bit, and it makes a nice cheese. It looks for all and tastes for all the world like something you bought at a nice thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, those kinds of things, and then regular sugar and using monk fruit makes a difference.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And that keeps you from going like just a little tiny bit. It doesn't, even though it says it's equal to regular sugar, you don't want to do that.
Oh, it's too sweet.
It's cloying.
Yeah.
I do put it on oat.
Oh, yeah.
With blueberry.
Nice.
Anything that's out, and this is the advanced plan where you don't use those grains that are supposed to be not doing well in the innards. For me,
Yeah.
in particular. Yeah, there's a lot of things out there you can exchange that will make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah. So how did you do on the scale?
Well, I did lose 5.4 pounds.
Nice. Very good.
I was hoping more.
Yeah, we can always push for more.
We'll go.
Well, and you'll notice that the more points you score, the better you'll do. And so it's a points-based system, and I think it's total capacity for points is somewhere around 400, and I scored somewhere around 300. So I didn't do perfectly, and I still did very well. So if that makes sense. So we're not here for perfection, we're here for better. And that's the thing I always say about these workshops, is if you can not take everything I teach you and apply it, but find one thing to build off of today that you're going to have built into your life for the next time, so much better. And I'm really looking forward to the end of this challenge, because we're going to celebrate the end of the challenge with by giving away a Ninja blender to the winner, and we're going to have a recipe night and try out some of the things that you really came to rely on. I did a lot of burgers because I'm a burger guy, but I did burger salad instead of burger on buns, and because I was cutting out the cheese, I had to find other things to put on. So I did a lot of eggs, and it was always on a bed of spinach. So it's just really, really good. Was there anything that you found, Christina, that was really beneficial over the course of the challenge?
That was really beneficial?
Yeah.
Probably, I wasn't prepared for that question.
Favorite recipe then?
There are a lot of great things though that happened actually. Favorite recipe, I really enjoyed, made like this shepherd's pie, mashed potatoes kind of thing. It was pretty good. It's actually in the book.
Nice.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, the cauliflower
mashed shepherd.
Yeah, because potatoes are just a little bit too high in the glycemic index, so we replaced that with cauliflower. And if you season it right, you don't notice a difference. If you do season it wrong, it tastes like cauliflower. Or don't blend it up enough. But it's really good, even if it does taste like cauliflower. So that's excellent. So before we get into the details of the challenge, though, I wanted to talk about why it's important to do some of this, because a lot of what's going on in the media is a lot of negativity regarding the weakness of the human immune system, especially as it relates to COVID. Now, disclaimer, I'm not here to talk about treating COVID. I'm here to talk about being so healthy that you don't have to worry about bacteria and viruses or anything outside. I mean, we existed for at least thousands of years without any intervention, without having to social distance or isolate or wear masks or sanitize everything. And we're still here, right? And B.J. Palmer once said that if the germ theory were correct, none of us would be around to believe it. Yeah, and you think about it. If you've got an exposure in a room, let's say the flu virus gets into a classroom, does everybody get infected, even if they're exposed? No. And what is it that determines whether one person gets infected or not? It's not the exposure. It's the health of the host. And Louis Pasteur, the father of the germ theory, he actually, he was competing with another scientist of the time who was, basically arguing and doing research saying, it's not the health It's not the germ that creates the disease. It's actually the health of the host that determines whether disease can take root and grow and spread. It's just the germ that determines the attributes and characteristics. And they battled back and forth their whole life, almost to a standstill, almost just with their science and their research. And this is how science comes and grows and develops. And then on his deathbed, both gentlemen were in the room. Louis Pasteur said to this other guy, "You were right. It is about the health of the host." And so I want to teach you guys tonight about how to increase the health of the host to a point where you just don't even have to worry about the next infection. Still be smart, still be safe, but you don't have to worry, because it's the people that are most afraid, that have the most stress, that are going to see the worst effects of it. So how to live a life without fear. So this is health from within, understanding your gut. Most of you know who I am, but for those of you that are following us online, I am Dr. Jake Tucker. I'm the owner here at Good Life Family Chiropractic. We were established here about 4 years ago, and we've done awesome work ever since. You can see on the screen my lovely family. That's 4/5 of us. A new baby that hasn't gotten a chance to get in family pictures yet because of said virus. But yeah, we love life, and these are some of the healthiest kids that you ever do and you'll ever meet. And who's met my kids? Anybody here? A couple of you. Yeah, they're great. I was talking to my son Dietrich, who's turning 6 this year, going into kindergarten, about why everybody's afraid of the virus, because he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand why people would be afraid of a virus. And I had to teach him it's because they're not healthy and they haven't invested in their health to get to this point where it's actually making them susceptible to it. And he's asked good questions like, why don't people invest in their health? Why aren't they proactive? And it's hard to answer those kinds of questions, because when you think about what's the most important thing in your life, what do you have without your health other than your eternal soul? Nothing. It doesn't matter what else we have if we don't have our health. Even the family starts to drift away if one or all of us start losing our health. That starts to become the priority. So yeah, and you guys know my story about how as a baby I quit breathing and turned blue every single night, up to 14 times in a night. And I went to doctor after doctor, just like we do in our healthcare system, right? We wait until there's a symptom, then we go to a doctor, he runs his tests, he gives us a diagnosis, and then there's a medication or a treatment to follow that. And they couldn't figure out the diagnosis part. So they just kept monitoring me and testing me and sending me to specialists. And it wasn't until 6 months later I finally found my way to a chiropractor's office that anybody ever told my mom what the cause of my breathing problems was. Top bone of my neck was shoved over to the side and wrapped around my brainstem such that my vagus nerve couldn't control my breathing. He did one adjustment and I've never had a breathing problem since. And that's not the only time that story's happened. My nephew had the exact same thing happen. My niece had the exact same thing happen. And in one out of those 2 cases, I got to be the chiropractor to adjust them and watch the life flow back into their lungs and out their mouth in the form of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's just incredible what removing interference from this amazing system that God created inside of us actually does for health. It's the reason I'm here today. Ultimately, even though I didn't know that story going into chiropractic school, I believe it's the reason I'm a chiropractor. I believe God preordains a lot of these things, even with all the choice that we have in the matter, that there was very little I could have done. I tried to be an engineer first. I tried to be a pastor first. And while I may be preaching at you a little bit tonight, I'm not called to any of those things like I'm called to be a chiropractor. And so I'm hoping to be able to bless you guys with this. But really my mission here in the state of Nebraska, here in the city of Lincoln, is that I want to empower longer, healthier lives through chiropractic care and integration of all 5 essentials. And if you need to know what those are, those are over here. We're going to be taking a deep dive into all of those tonight and how they affect this tube. But really, you want to see the vision of what I've got planned for this city. We can't just stay in this room forever. If we're going to advance this word, we have to create more rooms like this. And whether that's recruiting more doctors to be spreading this message and teaching people what it actually means to be healthy instead of just treating sickness with symptom management tools, then we recruit more doctors. If it means that I have to start opening up more clinics around town, I'll open up more clinics. If it means I have to recruit more doctors to this town, we'll recruit more doctors to this town. But ultimately, we need more access to more people, because even if every chiropractor in this town believed what I believed, taught what I taught, and practiced the way I practiced, and they each saw 1,000 patients a week, would see less than 10% of Lincoln's population. That's if every chiropractor believed it that way. And if this is the right way, if this is the truth, I don't ever believe it'll get to 100% because some people just are destined to reject the truth. But we need to get the word out. And so ultimately, I'm going to invest everything I have into making this as big as I possibly can. But I need your help. I need you to tell people about the radio show. I need you to click that like button, comment in the back, maybe come back afterwards and look that up and share that video with your friends and family, the ones that need to hear about this message. Because I can't do this by myself. I need your help on this mission. So it really, when we're talking about health, it doesn't start with the digestive system, but it always wraps around back to the digestive system, doesn't it?
I agree.
Yeah, it really does. Because when you're talking about how your body heals, first off, we have to recognize, one, God's the source of all healing. It doesn't happen without him. He breathed that breath of life into those first 2 cells. They duplicated and replicated themselves 36 trillion times into this living, loving, thinking clay that's here right now. And then from there, it continues to do so. Every 15 to 20 years, you're brand new at a cellular level. But it doesn't do that just with the intelligence. The intelligence needs something to work with. It's like a potter needs some clay. Otherwise, he's not much of a potter, is he? And so we give it what we need through what we put in the top end of that tube, right? And then eventually, it ends up assimilating into us, and then the waste material comes out the other end, right? You guys got the gist of all that. So how that works is a very, very complex process that I'm going to try as best I can to simplify this, because I know not everybody spent years or even months studying the human digestive system and the anatomy and physiology. So I'm going to try to keep it simple. I also want you guys to learn something today. So while I was putting all this together and putting the research into this, I really held back on some of the more textbooks type stuff. So I'm more or less just going to share the easy things so much. So the health of the digestive system is really determined by, number one, the absorption of nutrients. You get that from the food you eat. Now, if you eat good food, there's a lot more nutrients to get out of that food. And I'm not talking about good tasting food necessarily, although did you ever feel like the food you were eating tasted bad over the last 3 weeks? No. I ate as good as I have ever eaten, ate some of the better recipes that I've ever eaten, but I also had to put a little bit more effort into preparing those foods because they're not as readily available. I couldn't walk down the grocery store aisle and be like, oh, that would make a great supper, and put it in my cart. It was usually, I have to get this and this and this, and then I'm going to take it home and put them all together, even if it's in a crock pot or a pressure cooker for later, so that I could then eat foods that actually would build health in my body. Because it's those nutrients that end up being that clay, that material that makes us up and determines whether we're healthy or not. And sometimes it actually interferes, depending on what you're putting into your body, with the absorption of nutrients if you're getting more towards this side of the chart. So we're going to be swapping this side for this side. There it is. Okay, I probably clicked it one too many times. So what is the gut microbiome? That is a very important question. So I actually kind of drew it out a little bit here, how all this works. So in your digestive system, there's basically this tube, and you can see the way that the path goes, and all these organs that are accessories to the digestion. But especially in the small intestine, there's this single layer of cells that make up what we refer to as a semi-permeable membrane. Semi meaning half or somewhat, permeable meaning that things can get through, but it's an intelligent system as well. So long as this is whole, you get the food coming in here, and you have bacteria in that digestive tract that actually help to create that intelligent interaction between the gut lining here and the food, and then the bloodstream on the other side. So there's bacteria in here, there's bacteria in here, your lymphatic system, your cardiovascular system, and your endocrine system. I mean, just about every other system in the body interacts directly into the bloodstream. But what we've found out in the last 5 years are that there are so many bacteria in your gut that play a role in this, that if you killed off all the bacteria, this would actually stop working. So this is why some people with that take too many antibiotics over the course of their life will struggle with digestive issues later in life. This is why people that eat foods that have antibacterial properties in them, things like refined sugars and too many carbs, will actually suffer with gut issues later in life. And so if you eat good foods, foods that God made, basically, foods that your body's designed to take up, different parts of them will go between the cells here into the bloodstream and then start to become assimilated into you. And that, whether that's the building blocks for hormones or the building blocks for other tissues and cells in your body, the intelligence that God created there is perfect and can do that perfect. But if it's bad food, or food that really isn't food, but is just like one particle away from plastic, then if you bombard the digestive system with this too much, instead of them getting through, because your body's trying to keep out the bad stuff, it does a pretty good job of it. You'll notice that if you eat bad food, the toilet gets stinkier, right? If you eat bad food, eventually the inflammatory properties and the inflammatory response that is created as it's passing through this digestive tract, as it goes through, will actually start to wear away these gap junctions here. Now, this can happen through a myriad of ways. Number one is, I would actually say, toxicity. So if you happen to consume foods that have too many heavy metals, or let's just say straight up poison. If you eat too many apple seeds, they have arsenic in it, right? Arsenic will attack your gut lining and break it down. It'll poison you. You'll die from it. Very unlikely to poison yourself with an apple. Have to eat a whole lot of apple cores to get to that point. But it can happen with the toxic exposure. You leave that there long enough, you don't recognize some of the effects, you don't recognize that your digestive system's a little too runny, or it doesn't hurt or bother you enough. Eventually, that creates a problem called leaky gut. We're going to go into more details on leaky gut. But basically, now we get whole food particles going into the bloodstream, and then whole food particles that used to be recognized as food and differentiated into excrement versus good raw materials now goes fully into the bloodstream and starts to create an autoimmune response. In the short term, that's a good thing. It saves your life. It creates a healthier you. In the long term, you now start to develop a sensitivity or an allergy to that food. And how do you tell if you have one of those? Well, you usually carry this band of belly fat. You usually do. And so most Americans actually do have several food sensitivities. The number one and number two most common ones being dairy and gluten. Now, it's not always an allergy. You're not always a full-on gluten intolerant, but about 80% of Americans are gluten sensitive, can't handle gluten well. And the reason is because of what gluten is. Gluten is a protein that's in plants that actually is there in high quantities when the food is not ripe yet. It's one of the warning signals that a plant will give an animal to not consume it. Like an apple that's supposed to be red, if it's still green, has high amounts of plant lectins in it that are similar. Gluten is just in that same family of lectins. And so it will actually, if you're a small animal and you eat an unripe fruit, it'll kill the animal. But if you're a large animal, like we are, and you consume an unripe fruit, it'll just give you a little bit of mild distress, maybe just a little bit of diarrhea. You can continue to do that over and over, like we've done for years with our grain industry. We mass produce grain to get through the growing process as quickly as possible while it still has a high amount of gluten in it. And now Americans have become more and more gluten intolerant, even if it's not a full-on allergy. So many of us are. Now, this room is mostly excluded from the dairy side of things. Not everybody here. So I know some of you individual patients, are not dairy sensitive, and dairy can be a healthy thing when consumed the right way. But for 90% or more of the world, it's simply lactose intolerant. And lactose is one of the sugars in milk. And the way that we like to consume lactose in this country is in high doses, because we like our dairy products fat-free. And when you eat fat-free or low-fat dairy products, what do they do to increase the taste of it? Because it's basically water if you pull out all the fat. They put more lactose back in. They basically condense fat-free milk and then put the condensed fat-free milk into your skim milk. And so if you look at the difference between a whole milk and a 1% or 0% or 0.5% milk, you'll notice that the lactose or sugar content of that low-fat milk is much higher than in the whole milk. So that's one of the things that we go to. So if you're not dairy sensitive and you're not gluten sensitive, then you do need to go to those whole fat dairy products. So I don't know what that is. Oh, I love the coconut yogurts. But the thing about yogurts, and so we can get into some of the details of this plan, but most yogurts in general in this country are so loaded with sugars. You can't get a flavored yogurt that's actually healthy for you. You have to make your own flavored yogurt, which isn't hard, right? You get a thing of fresh berries and a thing of whole fat plain yogurt, dump it in, maybe a splash of vanilla or a splash of stevia, or you can do monk fruit if you don't like the way stevia tastes. And now you've got a healthy, something that builds health as opposed to something that creates inflammation. So the microbiome are all those bacteria there. So you'd think, okay, so that's just in your digestive system, so it must not be that many. Well, there's actually 10 times more bacteria in you than there are human cells. You are actually more bacteria than you are you. So who's the host? And then if you look at viruses, it's estimated that we're 100 times more viral material than we are human DNA, human cells. And so we have very little understanding of why this is right now. This is so new. Most doctors don't know this. This came out while I was in chiropractic school. In chiropractic school, we actually have nutrition classes beyond just the food pyramid and FDA vitamin recommendations. And so we were learning about how to, help take care of patients holistically and giving them real foods, and some of the experience from clinical nutritionists that have just a nutrition clinic. And you're like, oh yeah, we just found out there's this thing called microbiome. It's been supporting all this stuff we've been saying about eating real food for years. Should not be eating this whole low-fat processed food diet that's got mostly grains in it. It's like, okay, now we're learning something. The science always comes up and supports what God created rather than the other way around. You're not going to undermine God's creation with science. If you're seeing it there, the science is insufficient. The science is insufficient. And if you ever hear someone say the science is closed, or the science has been determined, probably wrong, because that's not the point of science. It's not ever to close. Science is always about asking more questions. We're still finding things out about how gravity works. How long have we known about gravity? How long has that been a law? Science is never closed. It's always just asking the next question. Intelligent scientists are always asking the next question. Unintelligent scientists, they take a conclusion that supports their ideology and they run with it. And I'm guilty with this sometimes too, because I don't always have time to just dive into the science. I'm just looking at the stuff that helps you. But then I see the other science and I see the other interpretations, and I see it in light of God's word, which is what we should do as believers. And then it actually reveals the truth. We learn a lot about God from his creation, but we can't interpret it outside of the realm of what God already tells us in his word. So the gut microbiome is very, very important and responsible for over 70% of our immune system. If you want a healthy immune system, you have to have a healthy gut microbiome. Then when you're talking about the gut, you have to talk about the gut-brain connection. Hopefully we'll get to in just a second. I must be running too much stuff on this computer. It is going slow. Yeah, even the button's not working. The mouse is working. That's good. All right. Got a black screen over here. Okay, gut-brain connection. There we are. It must have clicked out for some reason. So, when you're talking about the nervous system, right? You're talking about the most important system in the body, the system that controls everything, the system that saved my life while also being compromised, almost cost me my life. The brain has about 500 with a B billion neurons. The gut, second most populous place for neurons, actually has about 300 million with an M. So still a lot of neurons and nerve endings. And the gut is actually responsible for most of those gut reactions and neurotransmitter production, especially things like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. GABA responsible for the sensation of fear. Anybody ever been nervous? Got the butterflies in their stomach? That's GABA. That's GABA talk. And so if you don't have a healthy gut, it can actually affect the way that your brain interprets emotions. Serotonin is that happy hormone. Dopamine. Don't get enough dopamine. Might need some of that. GABA. Get too much of that, you're going to be in fear and anxiety all the time. And so if the production is dysregulated in that gut, it's actually going to keep the brain from being able to interpret just what's going on around you well. And so a lot of mental conditions, psychiatric conditions can actually be explained by a dysbiosis of what's happening in the gut and the microbiome there. So, and I already covered this next slide. It's talking about the gut and immunity with 70% of the immune system housed in the gut. But, then you talk about what creates problems in the gut, and that's inflammation. When you're talking about the things that kill people in the world that we live in today, number one, cancer. Number two, it's expected to be cancer this year. We haven't gotten the actual numbers yet. Number one, cardiovascular disease, 840,000 deaths last year. Number two, cancer, 600,000 deaths last year. Number three, strokes. Number four, I believe it is a lung issue of some kind. But it goes from 840 to 600,000 to 200,000. And by the time we get to lungs, we're under 100,000 for the first time. And what we're looking at with that is that inflammation is at the root cause of every single one of these diseases. And so if we're going to address the gut, then we're going to have to address inflammation at the root of this. And so the role that this plays is this bad food that we're eating, it actually attacks these gut linings and these semi-permeable membranes, and the inflammation, the inflammatory response, and that's of your own immune system that's doing it, actually will spread that out. And so your body can handle a spoonful of sugar, right? A tablespoon is not going to kill you. I had some over the last 3 weeks. I tried to avoid it, but it's in some things, and I didn't eat perfectly, right? I only scored 300 points instead of 400 points. But if you eat too much, if you eat like the average American eats, you have too many bad fats. And we'll go through the things that create inflammation, but ultimately it starts to attack things like the gap junction cells. The inflammation will actually build up and it'll start to create some of these conditions here. And so we have to attack inflammation from its root if we're going to have a healthy gut. I'm not even sure if this is working. So we're just going to go with the button. So that's where leaky gut comes in. I explained that a lot already, but really, if you've got a regularly upset stomach, unintentional weight changes, if you have sleeping issues or fatigue or food sensitivities or bloating or skin problems or digestive issues, all of which I can point to regularly, then you've got very, very likely got leaky gut. And that's a problem because leaky gut and inflammation doesn't just lead to problems, it leads to serious diseases. We look at some of these things: Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease, IBS. The progression goes inflammation to IBS, Crohn's, celiac, name a whole bunch of other things as well that fall within this paradigm. You leave this untreated, untaken care of, it very often progresses to cancer. Because what is cancer really? Cancer is an inability of your immune system to be able to handle cells that don't die. T killer cells are designed to kill cancer cells in your body. You are actively killing cancer right now in your body. 99% of Americans at a given time have cancer actively growing in their body. But most of us also have T killer cells coming in and just squashing that thing right off. But if you have that leaky gut and you have that inflammation coming in and you don't deal with it, it's going to progress. Even if it's just mild symptoms, even if you have no symptoms at all, except you might be a little bloated just around the waist. We have to address this at its root cause. Otherwise, it's going to lead to outcomes that we just don't want. So we're going to address all of these with the 5 essentials. So what are the 5 essentials? We've got the core chiropractic side of things. You guys are all getting that taken care of. If you're watching on Facebook right now and you don't have a chiropractor, call the office, 531-289-7100, and we'll get you hooked up. We'll plug you in. But everybody needs a chiropractor. If for nothing else, then to at least check your spine and make sure it's healthy. But in my 10 years of practice, how many healthy spines have I seen? None, because we don't take care of them. Think about it. If a dentist went into a population where nobody took care of their teeth, how many people would have healthy teeth? None, because they haven't been taught how to take care of it. There's not a default state there that takes care of the spine. If we were all taught at birth how to do our warm-up exercises and to do the traction and the wobbles and to hold ourselves in good posture all the time, then maybe I would find a couple. The beauty pageants, there used to be a posture assessment. They would assess posture in beauty pageants. It's gone now because nobody has good posture. I know because my sister, who has a scoliosis, was actually one of the contestants. And there was nothing about posture. And her shoulders were all like that. She's a beautiful girl. But yeah, absolutely. It's something that we have to address, is that posture and the reflection into the central nervous system and the healing process. Nutrition, absolutely. We're going to spend a ton of time on nutrition tonight. Mindset, you guys have no idea. Mindset might be the most important aspect of this. Fitness, you can summarize that one in fitness, but the point of fitness is oxygen and really movement. It says exercise. Really, it's about movement, because movement is life when you're talking about life at its most basic component. And then toxicity, we have to address toxins, because toxins can absolutely come in here and play a major role in that process and disrupting the gut. So let's get into this. Number one, we're going to be affecting poor gut from a mindset perspective. If you're looking at the challenges, the first section has just as many points as every other section in this. And it really does. It comes down to mindset, because what you believe becomes your reality. So often. And I love this stuff. I need to get my hands on more of these studies, because we had some research on knee surgeries. And this brilliant knee surgeon, he was doing a pure placebo controlled study where you actually did a open knee surgery on the placebo patients without doing anything. He would actually put a video up of a knee surgery going on while they were splashing around inside the knee and cleaning it out, but not actually doing anything, just cut open. And then he'd sew them back up. And then the other group where he actually did the knee surgeries. And guess what he found? The people that had the knee surgery versus had the placebo got better from the same conditions at the exact same rate. It's incredible. And so placebo is a real thing. If you really think you're going to get well, or the intervention that you're taking is going to get you well, it will, more often than not. Way more often than not, if you really look at the research. And then the power of hope, too, the power of optimism. They did a study of rats, and they put them in a bucket to measure of water, to measure how long they would swim for. And they made it about 16 minutes when they just left them. But if they took them out after about 5 minutes, and then they put them back in again and let them swim, guess how long they lasted? Hours. Because they had hope that there was help coming. And the power of optimism and the power of hope in any condition are probably the key components. And so if you're dealing with anything, don't give up hope. And definitely don't take a pessimistic view on it. Because if you tend to be pessimistic, if you tend to think that things will not work out well, you're going to influence the way that these outcomes change for you more often than not. It's really incredible what mindset does for this. But then you look at the standard American lifestyle, standard American life, we put ourselves under so much stress, all these deadlines, all this pressure to perform, to make more money, to drive a nicer car, to have a bigger house. It's a success-based system, and there's a lot of good things to say about capitalism and democracy too. But in this system right now, we live under more stress today than we've ever lived before. And maybe it's not capitalism and democracy, maybe it's technology. Maybe it's straying from principles of health as we live in a more secular culture, one that values things like money, one that values things like achievement. And as we look for those things, we realize that the hole inside of our heart is not money-shaped and not thing-shaped, but it's God-shaped. We've been chasing the wrong thing the whole time. That creates stress when you achieve what you think you achieve. How many professional athletes, they win a championship and they think this is the pinnacle, but then they find it's not enough. And then they try to win more, thinking that it's just more. And they go on trying to win, or turning to other things because they realize that winning is not what they were built for, not what they were created for, not what that void in their lives actually was. And so we need to identify those stressors. But if we're going to manage our gut from a stress response, we need to, number one, find those things that create stress in our lives and avoid them, because those things, they actually do something inside of our brains. When you're stressed, it deactivates the parasympathetic nerves that control our digestion. And they activate the sympathetic nerves here that inhibit digestion. And if your digestion is inhibited for the sake of stress, you can take probiotics, you can eat the right foods, you can exercise, you can get adjusted. But if it's inhibited, it's not going to do well. Just like if we cut off all those nerves because of subluxation, it's not going to do well. And so we have to address the stress. And we have to know where it comes from so we can avoid those stressors or at least minimize their effects. When you're aware of those stressors, they have much less power over because you can take control over. Number two, we're going to need to rejuvenate. We're going to have to find those things that help to build peace in our lives, and then we're going to have to create strategies to implement those things regularly in our lives. So let's dive into this a little deeper. So causes it, oh, sorry, no, that was it. I thought there were 3 more slides coming. So yeah, no, avoid, rejuvenate, and strategize. So identify those things that are bad for you, identify those things that are good for you, and then create a plan. You can't succeed with a plan if you don't have a plan. You have to actually have to create a plan. So the spine absolutely can create a huge distress here. Just like I talked about this sympathetic state, when you inhibit the digestive system with a stressful state, you can also have subluxation creating the same thing. So when your spine's out of alignment, this can absolutely create disease. And really, when you think about it, what controls health and how your body heals, it's your central nervous system or the intelligence inside there. For your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for your stomach to digest the food and turn it into you, small intestines rather, stomach just breaks it down. You have to have those proper signals running through your nervous system out to the digestive system. And it doesn't happen any other way. The spine is designed to surround and protect your central nervous system. It has a normal posture, straight up and down from the front, with 3 45-degree curves from the side. When you have that, there can be no pressure and damage on your nervous system. When you don't have that, when it's out of alignment by even 2 millimeters or 2 degrees, that's enough to disrupt the nerves running out through there by as much as 60%, disrupting the communication between the brain and those organs. Doesn't mean your brain's off the job. It means that it's just taking a guess. And when it comes to all these millions and billions and trillions of bacteria and viruses that we know nothing how to deal with, right? We don't even know what they do half the time. We want our brain and that intelligence inside our brain to be on the job full time so it can make up for our lack of understanding, our lack of science to explain what's going on. That's why I will always get adjusted for the rest of my life. Not because I hurt, not because I feel out, but because I want to make sure that the power that made the body, that resides inside my central nervous system that was placed there by God above, is able to come down and express itself from the inside out and be a blessing to everyone else around me as well. So that I can fulfill the purposes and plans that God has for my life. So we invest in the nervous system. What happens when it's out of position? Well, degeneration, arthritis, tension on the spinal cord, on the brainstem. You see those nerve roots, they start not functioning well. We need that curve in our neck. And so that's where chiropractic comes in, where we get checked and adjusted. And ultimately, my vision for each of you is not necessarily to adjust you every week for the rest of your lives. But ultimately, I want to put you on a plan where I can see you about once every other week and only adjust you on those times where I find it's absolutely necessary. But which types of patients are going to get there? Patients that come to me after years and years and years of dealing with problems from a medical or allopathic perspective where all you're treating is symptoms, and then finally last chance chiropractor, or patients that have proactively invested in their spinal health and built that up for years and years and years and gotten to the point where they can be on a wellness plan and take care of their spine with just regular daily maintenance, with the home care exercises. That's what I want. I don't want to have to put everybody on an expensive plate. But I come in with these rotting spines with phase 2 and phase 3 degeneration, arthritis, and scoliosis, and a reverse curve in their neck, like we saw in the last slide. And we're dealing with symptoms from that because of the interference to the brain. And I'm not able to put you there no matter how much I want to, because we've spent too much time in that subluxated state. And so ultimately, I want to get you there. But it takes investing in. So let's jump into the nutrition here. So the number one thing that we have to recognize is that as Americans, we're really set up for failure in this. Our goal for nutrition, the bar is so low. So low. I mean, and maybe it's a problem with the schools, maybe it's a problem with a secular society, but when it comes to nutrition, we're basically being told, eat a couple of vegetables, a couple of fruits, and then a ton of things that have a ton of sugars that should taste really good, that actually most of us, and really our minority populations especially, are very, very likely to have poor reactions to. If you give most African Americans a source of dairy at every single meal, you will create IBS, you will create Crohn's disease, you will create ulcerative colitis, and you will create obesity and diabetes, and ultimately cancer and heart disease. Which population has the highest rate of heart disease in the United States of America? African Americans. And maybe we didn't know about that until just recently, but maybe we need to start waking up. And at the most basic level, the CDC, the ones that have been so worried about this dang virus for the last 4 months, that took them 6 months of saying, wear a mask, isolate, to finally say, you know, maybe you should get outside and get some sunshine, because we're seeing that vitamin D3 actually helps to prevent you from getting this virus. 6 months before they put any sort of post out. Maybe the FDA needs to get their act together, instead of saying, generally you need fruits and vegetables and grains and proteins and dairy, and actually teach us about where nutrition and where health and life come from. Because nutrition isn't about a diet. I'm not giving you guys a diet tonight. I'm giving you guys a challenge to take steps to get better at what it is that you're doing today. So for tomorrow, you can build more health than you did yesterday. So that we can have that hope, that we can build towards something, so that we can build healthier. But our government right now is setting the bar way too low. And in many places, in many regards, especially that right there, that top right section, it's actually building sickness and disease in many of us. When most of us are susceptible to the things that we're recommending the most of, and the reason that those things are going in there is because of a lobbyist bloc that has a ton of money invested in those fields, then maybe we should relook at the entire institution that's creating those recommendations. And we really do. The top of the FDA, the top of the CDC, those guys are coming directly from the industries that they're supposed to be regulating. And so we need to start questioning not just where the information is coming from, but the legislators themselves and the decision makers and the appointers of these positions. We should be asking our representatives to not take these dollars from the lobbyists. My wife, she went through this Leadership Lincoln program, and some of you may have heard of Leadership Lincoln, but it's a really cool organization. I got to hear a little bit about it, and ultimately I may do it myself someday. But what I was hearing about just the legislature is that we've got so many people coming into the legislature that have no idea what they're doing. Really, your elected politicians, they're not career politicians, especially at the state level, you know, here in Nebraska, really. But these lobbyists don't have term limits. They're career lobbyists. They know more about what the process looks like than these legislators will learn in a lifetime, because they have industries behind them that have invested billions of dollars into making sure that their interests are protected. And so they're ultimately steering the boat. And it was just really sad to see. You go to medical doctors in hospitals, and they talk about this stuff. They talk to Leadership Lincoln about the disease burden of the United States and how their hands are tied by the current system of not being able to address cause and only being able to treat your symptoms. They want better for you. They just can't give it to you because they're stuck in a dying system. You realize that the hospitals are losing money in every single center except the cancer centers? The cancer centers are what keep the hospitals afloat. They need you to get cancer in order to stay open. They don't want you to get cancer, right? You don't know a single colleague that wants them to get cancer. But financially, they do. Even if it's just the system itself that perpetuates it. So we have to exit the system. Just like in Romans 12, verse 2, it says, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you can test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. We have to exit. Stage left. We have to be in the world, but not of the world. That's the hard line to toe. Because I can't stand here and condemn without also turning that mirror back on myself. And when I see 300 out of 400 points, oof, that's a C. We all have room to grow. We all have room to grow. And so it's not about the discouragement, it's about the encouragement. So we need to start getting it right. But it starts with remembering that if we don't take time, if we don't invest in our health today, and we're going to have to make time and invest in our sickness and disease later. That's just the fact of the matter. Because if you continue doing the same things that everyone else is doing, who are you to expect that things are going to end up any differently than everyone else? So we have to start to make these changes. So the gut health diet, this is really what we're going to focus on for the next 21 days. Number one, we're going to avoid those things that irritate and inflame. Number two, we're going to replenish those things in our body that we're getting rid of in the process of improving our gut, and then we're going to supplement where needed. So, number one, what are we going to avoid? Well, we need to avoid, number one, artificial sweeteners. Why artificial sweeteners? Because they do a number on the microbiome. They do a number on our hormones. They do a number on creating inflammation in our gut. What are artificial sweeteners? Well, they're the sweeteners that you can't find in nature, that don't come naturally. Things like aspartame, things like sucralose, things like Splenda. I would rather you have a packet of table sugar than any of those things, because at least your body knows what sugar is. When it doesn't know what it is, yeah, it gets rid of it, and so there's a zero caloric interface, but it still spikes your insulin levels. It tricks your brain into thinking there's sugar there when there actually isn't, and you get fatter and develop diabetes because of that. I don't want you getting diabetes. So we're going to avoid those artificial sweeteners, and we're going to replace them with what? Where's the good stuff? Fruit. Fruit's naturally sweet, but it comes with enough fiber that it basically has a really, really low glycemic effect. Stevia. Even if it's extracted from the stevia leaf itself, its glycemic index is less than 10. Fruit, on the other hand, sits 30 and above for the most part. Table sugar is around 100 for your reference. Xylitol, yeah, it's kind of iffy. It can do a number on your microbiome too, depending on how your microbiome is set up. Some people react more strongly than other people. And actually, I was really toying with this idea. Have you guys ever gone to the Amazon reviews section for Haribo's sugar-free gummy bears? Oh, I strongly, if you need a laugh, go to Amazon, look up Haribo's sugar-free gummy bears, and just look at the reviews, because it's made with maltitol. They use maltitol as the sweetener, and it is a laxative. And so people don't realize this. And yeah, some really, really good stories. I won't give them away. You guys do some reading later. But yeah, xylitol can have the same effects. It's slightly more mild, but it is a slightly better replacement for flavor on sugar. Monk fruit is a great one. You found great success with that. The sugar alcohols in monk fruit are going to bake better than things like stevia or just putting fruit in something. Well, it helps bind the foods together just a little bit more. But yeah, dates and raw honey, they're going to be a little higher glycemic. Honey, raw honey even, is pure fructose. You know, it's got some good things in there as well, so it has some health benefits, but it is going to spike your blood sugar. And so if you're diabetic, if you have blood sugar issues, don't mess around with raw honey. Stick with the low glycemic sweeteners on that one. Processed and high sugar foods. So sugar absolutely creates inflammation. We know that. In fact, I could do a demonstration here, but I don't have a huge structure that we could test out. But it's fun. You take a tablespoon of sugar, you stick your arm out, or do it without a tablespoon of sugar first, and just see how strong you are. Have someone pull down on your arm, and then put the sugar in your mouth. You don't even have to swallow it. Just put it in your mouth. Then have someone pull on your arm just the same, and watch your arm blow up. Just putting the sugar in your mouth creates so much interference into your system, challenges your system so much that it recruits your energy sources away from the thing you're actively trying to do, and you become weaker. It challenges your system, and that's just in your mouth, let alone when it hits your gut. Processed foods are the source of the most sugar in the United States. You look at the average American's consumption of sugar. Where does it come from, number one? Sodas. Yep, sugary beverages, even juices. If you look at a bottle of orange juice and the same amount of soda, no difference in the sugar content. There might be a few more beneficial things for you in the can of juice, but it doesn't make up for how much sugar is there. If you want the benefits that that juice has for you without the sugar, how about eat the fruit? That actually has the fiber in there. That's much, much better for you. So processed foods come in number 2 behind the sodas as far as the sugar content. Because in this country, we have a love affair with low-fat foods. Low-fat foods taste like cardboard unless they have what in it? Sugar. Sugar, absolutely. Next thing that we're looking at is conventional meats. And I point out conventional meats over here because when you're talking about inflammation, there's nothing that's going to inflame you faster than getting your omega-3s and your omega-6s off, and then throwing a couple of pesticides on top of it as well. Conventional meats are those grown and raised off of corn. And we love our corn-fed cattle here in Nebraska, so I know I'm offending some people's religion. All right? No, and I actually had this conversation with a gentleman on the phone. He was a friend of another chiropractor, and he was actually from here while I was living in Atlanta. And I was telling him how, we were talking about barbecue and how much we love, steaks in particular. He's like, oh, yeah, I got this great corn-fed cut, and I put it in my smoker, all this stuff. I'm like, oh, no, give me grass-fed. He's like, no, I can't do the taste of grass-fed. But when you want to know how healthy your meat is, cook it in a pan and watch the fat. If the fat comes off clumpy, or it's still thick and white and chewy and rubbery on the outside of the meat, that's going to be your corn-fed meat. But if it melts off like water and just sits in the bottom of the pan until it gets back below at room temperature, now with our ACs blowing around 72 to 74 degrees, that's going to stay thin and watery the whole time. That's a fat that's actually really good for you. The chewy, rubbery fat, you cut that off because you don't even want to put it in your mouth and chew on it at all. But that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in the corn-fed cow is between 17 to 1 and 30 to 1. The grass-fed is between 1 to 1 and 4 to 1. Guess which one reflects where your body should be? The grass-fed. So we have to watch out for those conventional meats. Nothing will irritate me more in a way that I have to be very quiet about than when family that doesn't know any better, that out of the biggest source of love and generosity in the heart, brings us over meat. And they got it on sale, and it only cost 50 cents a pound. Oof. What should I do with that?
Feed it to the dog.
Yeah, I wish I had a dog to feed it to. I have to send it back to Michigan to feed it to the dog. But do you really want to feed it to the dog?
Not really.
Do you think the dog is any more deserving of the inflammation that builds up in your body when you consume that thing?
Make the dog sick too.
And we have to draw black and white lines like this, or else the line gets too far the wrong direction because everybody else is doing it. The culture is doing it, and it's easy to get consumed with it. I have no problem with junk food unless what? It's in my house. I can go through the grocery store and up and down the junk food aisles, but if I put it in my cart and I buy it and I take it in my house, it calls to me. It beckons me. But guess what that junk food is? It creates junk. It's a choice for cancer. It's a choice for heart disease. It's a choice for diabetes and inflammation and leaky gut and all these things. And so we have to avoid those things. Alcohol, I know this makes some people sad, but honestly, anything other than red wine has been shown no benefit in any of the scientific literature. Then you look at scripture. What does it say? What's the one thing that scripture says to drink at all? Wine. It doesn't speak strongly of drinking wine regularly or often, but the only thing that there's any support of in scripture for drinking at all when it comes to alcohol is wine. And we're starting to see that play out in the research. Now, when you look at the fruity drinks, right, the distilled alcohols, those are the ones that are going to be most damaging to you. Beer is also on that scale, mostly because it's coming from that grain source. And I know both of those, my digestive system reacts strongly to it. But when I just stick to red wines, then I'm much, much better off. Now, it's also important to note that in this country, about 100% of even organic wines have some traces of glyphosate. Everybody know what glyphosate is? Anybody not? Okay. Oh yeah, it's the Roundup weed killer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the owner of that company, Monsanto, also known as Bayer, aspirin, they've lost over $1 billion in lawsuits over the last couple of years because of what glyphosate does to your digestive system. It works just like gluten does in breaking down these gap junctions, and they've shown that it's a probable carcinogen. The World Health Organization has it listed as a probable carcinogen, and they're starting to lose lawsuits over this. So don't use it, but also just recognize that if you're wanting a red wine source, look to Europe, because they don't even allow Roundup on their crops. So you're not going to find it. So those are the things that we're going to avoid. Number 2 is we're going to replenish. So we need to replenish our omega-3s. The standard American diet has this total disruption of omega-6s to omega-3s. We're around 17 to 1, where we should be 2 to 1, or somewhere between 1 to 1 or 4 to 1 with omega-6 to omega-3s. And so where are we going to get that? We're going to get that from seafood, especially fish. Salmon are awesome at this. Seeds, especially chia seeds and flax seeds, are very rich in omega-3s. And there's more out there, but those are the big ones. If you can just get a source of seafood 3 to 5 days a week, you're great. You probably don't even need to supplement. But if you're like me and you don't like fish, then you probably need to keep a thing of flax on hand, and you need to keep a thing of chia on hand and put it in smoothies or oatmeal or whatever, so that you're getting some more omega-3s in your diet naturally. And then I do have some frozen salmon on hand, and I just season the heck out of it. And it's like, I get this big thing of Cajun seasoning, and basically the outer coating is Cajun. You know, you don't even taste the fish after I'm done with it. But then probiotics as well. So when you do live the standard American lifestyle, which I did, which most of us did, most of you guys know that I was a pizza delivery guy for, over a year. It was pizza for dinner with a side of Coke, right? Yep. So I'm wrecking my microbiome with these foods that are so processed that they aren't even real, don't have any nutritional content at all. I need to get good bacteria back in there. So how do you do that? Well, number one, let's eat cultured foods. German Americans, we know that as like sauerkraut, yogurt. Very, very simple. But the rest of the world will know that as like kombucha and kefir and kimchi, and you can add all these foods in as well. Some of you might not like those very much, but you can also supplement those as well. But if you're going to supplement those, once you finish a bottle of one brand of supplement, you should switch to a different brand or a different focus. And I know oftentimes you get, like ours are just one type and it never changes in our supplement line. You can go and get like Garden of Life has like 6 different types in the refrigerated section alone of probiotics. And you should be switching through those with probiotics. Prebiotics, that's the food that probiotics, those good bacteria, need to survive. What is that known as? Fiber. If you have a fiber-rich diet, then your microbiome should be sufficiently taken care of. Where does that come from? Not bread. Vegetables. Vegetables are the most fiber-rich, plentiful source on the planet. And then raw foods. Most of the foods that we eat are overcooked and overprocessed and are robbed so much of the few nutrients and minerals that they have in them that they're not beneficial. Most nutrient-rich foods are the ones that we eat raw. So if you can eat raw vegetables at least once a day, and whether that's putting it in a smoothie or just having it as a side salad or just some carrots or some celery or some cucumbers, just along the side of whatever else you're eating, it's going to make a huge difference in the amount of nutrients you're getting in your system. If you don't want to take a multivitamin, eat spinach 3 times a day. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. Who's going to go out and eat spinach 3 times a day? Not me. I might put it in my smoothie, and you might convince me to put it under a burger, but I'm going to be hard pressed to add another time. And so we do have to, supplement those things sometimes. So then sometimes that's where the supplements come in. So she's taking the omega there. But what we've got for people that are dealing with digestive issues is a gut health bundle. And so you can see that here. You can look this up on the website. Just go to goodlifefamilychiropractic.com/store and you can look up these bundles. This is the gut health bundle. But I want to go through these real quick because we've got a few different supplements in here that can really make a difference. And the one that I actually started off the 21 days taking, I was finishing up an older bottle that I had, is the Max GI. And what this is a combination of probiotics, prebiotics, and digestive enzymes. And so we need digestive enzymes in order to help break down the food. That's in raw foods, very plentifully. But if you're not getting a lot of raw foods or you haven't had raw foods in a while, you may need an introduction of those into your digestive system. You might need some of those additional probiotics that need to thrive in the digestive system. It also comes with a few essential oils that also help to benefit there. If you need more help on the essential oil side, Michelle's here. She's got a table set up over there. If you haven't heard about essential oils, I highly recommend you stop over and let her tell you a little bit more about what they can do, because not all oils are omega-3s and omega-6s, no matter what you've heard coming out of my mouth. So it's important. So yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic supplement. It really helped me start the month off well. Pro-L-glutamine. Glutamine is probably the most plentiful amino acid in your body. And amino acids are the backbone of every protein chain. And if you've got leaky gut, it means that you've got broken protein chains in your digestive system, which may mean that you need more glutamine to get there. The type that your body needs is actually the L, which stands for left. It's just the way that it spins when you're looking at it under a microscope. But this is actually beneficial for people with leaky gut because it can go in and help restore that gut lining. The fiber. Now, some of you just don't like doing the raw vegetables. I get it. So sometimes you need something like this to add into a smoothie or to add into a pudding or a dessert. It comes unflavored, doesn't have any sweeteners in there, doesn't taste like anything. If you put the right amount in, you just won't even notice it. But that's for those people that need to transition onto real foods. Some of these supplements I'm giving you are just a replacement for real foods until you get ready to eat those real foods, until you're used to eating the right way. We've come so far away from the plant that's really disrupted us. The probiotics, of course, I've talked about. This one's 50 billion. This is one of the most concentrated doses that you'll get. I'd suggest starting with this one and then moving to somebody else's refrigerated section and then moving through that refrigerated section before moving back. But this is a good one for the month, for the 21-day challenge. This is what I gave all my employees as soon as COVID became a big thing to help boost their immune system. The Gut Renew capsules, these are fantastic as well. They also come in a powder. It's a peach flavor. It's a little sweeter, and it helps to rebuild that gut lining. I love this supplement. It's fantastic and very easy to take. Now, normally that'd be about $220 for those. Today, everything is 15% off. Some of these we do need to pre-order. So if you pre-order it today, we're going to throw in, what is it? There it is, the Gut Health Recipe Book. And that's about a $10 value with some recipes that you won't find anywhere else. I know you all have the Align Your Health book with a cookbook in the back. When you're talking about renewing your gut, a lot of the recipes in there are fantastic. So the other thing that I recommend if you haven't started on yet, if those are more advanced supplements, a lot of you are already taking these, but this is something I take every day without fail. And I say every day without fail, knowing that I fail probably one day a week just because I have a life, I have kids, I have practice. It happens. We get busy, sometimes too busy to even take supplements. But if I do, then I double up the next day. And I try to spread it out morning and evening so I am getting enough. But it is something that I did really good at for the last 21 days. I take the men's formula because guess what? I'm a man, in case you were mistaken. Daily essentials. I know the beard, it really disguises things. But the women's is essential for women, especially if you've hit puberty at all and you're female, then you should probably be taking a supplement just because of the way that your body process is going. So if you're trying to decide between either the guy or the girl, start with the girl because female stress requires just an advanced level of nutrients that men still need, but not as urgent. that makes sense, if it comes down to a budget issue. But absolutely, I would suggest both men and women start here before getting into some of that other stuff. Because like I said, a lot of those other things you can get from food. But everything today is 15% off. If you're watching online, you can also get 15% off. Just text us at 531-289-7100, and we'll get you a link to the store so that you can get those ordered. So, but then from there, we need to be on either the advanced plan or the core plan. I did a little bit of a combination. My combination was about 19 days of advanced plan, about 95% of the time, with 2 days of core plan. And what core plan is, you can read the words if you want to, but what it breaks down to is if God made it and said you could eat it, eat it. If man made it, leave it. Right? Avoiding processed food. It's sticking on this side of everything without restriction. And that's great for anyone to just stay healthy. That's really how all of us should be eating all the time, regardless of diagnosis or symptom. But a lot of us have fallen off the wagon, so to speak, and have developed disease processes. And we need just something a little bit more intensive and aggressive. This is the ketogenic diet before the ketogenic diet was ever invented. We've been preaching this for more than 10 years on how to eat when you have a chronic disease process inside your body. It addresses the hormones. It addresses the sugar issues. It addresses the oil issue. It even addresses the meat source issue, which is one of the biggest holes in the ketogenic diet, because they'll have you eating pork and conventional meats and all these foods that are actually highly inflammatory, but because it keeps the blood sugar low, they're doing what the ketogenic diet is designed to do. I'm not opposed to the ketogenic diet. We've seen a lot of success. Let's just do it right if we're going to do it. And we call that the advanced plan. So what it means is, number one, you're not going to do any grains at all because they turn to sugar in your mouth. Yeah, they come with a little bit of fiber if you eat them whole, but it's still going to turn to sugar and going to have an impact on your hormones. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to reduce the sugars in our fruits, not by excluding fruits, but by only eating those fruits that are lower on the glycemic index. Things like berries, Granny Smith apples, and grapefruits, with some restrictions depending on which medications you're on, of course. But the advanced plan is basically the ketogenic diet. And so I did that for the last 21 days, coming off of actually a fairly high carb, just dairy-free and gluten-free diet. And I did awesome with it. I was really surprised. The first day, I actually did feel pretty bad. I had a little flushing of some stuff from my system. But other than the flushing, I didn't actually feel bad. I didn't do badly. It was just the detoxification of some of those things that I had gotten lazy about that were actually creating a toxicity reaction inside my body, and did awesome with this. So the advanced plan is one of those that healthy people can do a lot. But one of the things that's going to interfere with that is toxins. So we talked about glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup weed killer. So that will actively break down that the gap junction cells in the gut lining. So we want to avoid that. BPA is another one. Most people think of this as an endocrine disruptor because it is. It also attacks the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut. And so where do you find BPA? Plastics, absolutely. And so some plastics advertise themselves as BPA free, but we're just starting to find out that there's other bisphenols. That's what BP stands for, is bisphenol. There's BPS. They're starting to find other BPs beyond that, and they're starting to find out that those BPs are also not good for the microbiome and also not good for the endocrine system and creating artificial estrogen mimickers there. So we want to look out for plastics in general. And that's the key word, is the BPA. Heavy metals are another one. If you've ever had silver fillings in your mouth, yeah, that probably disrupted your gut. Heavy metals are very highly toxic, especially to the gut lining. And so if you open your mouth and you look in the mirror and there are dark spots in your teeth because you had dental work done old school, it's actually the mixture in there has mercury in it. And so we're going to have to work to do a heavy metal detox. And it might be one of those things that you do need medical intervention. And you need to actively pull those heavy metals out of your blood and out of your bloodstream. And if you do still have those in there, you need to find a dentist that can safely remove them from your teeth. Because even just drilling it out can release mercury into your system and create toxicity reaction, not just in you, but also in the dentist. And so you have to be trained on how to remove those if you're getting those out. Also be looking at your pans, your cookware. What's it made of? Is it stainless steel? Is it ceramic? Is it cast iron? Those are good. Those are fine. Is it aluminum? Is it non-stick? Is it, what's the other one? Teflon? Yeah. I mean, if you cook in one of those pans and you have a bird hanging over top of that, it won't be too long that that bird decides to move on to the next life because of the off-gas. You know, what's aluminum? What's the big thing that you're afraid of when you think of aluminum? The brain. We know Alzheimer's and dementia are linked to aluminum. And we're cooking in these pans that are hard anodized aluminum that are, we put these antiperspirants in our deodorant that the active ingredient is aluminum. And then what are our vaccines? What's one of the number one ingredients in the vaccines? An aluminum adjuvant to activate the immune system to help create that immune response. I'm not lining up for this COVID vaccine. I'm not going to be the guinea pig. They've already fast-tracked this thing. I'm not getting in line for that. So yeah, we look at those things. So we do need to detoxify. The advanced plan is naturally detoxifying, but there are some other things that you can do on top of that. Things like cilantro is great for heavy metal detox. Can it induce a, you know, we we had a great story this last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so
I didn't know she ordered cilantro.
Yeah, so she put some cilantro oil in her.
It's not me.
No, not her. April was out for the first couple days last week because she had a detox response. So cilantro can actually start to cleanse your body of some of the toxic buildup, especially of heavy metals. Instead of using cilantro in a recipe, she put cilantro oil, which is just a concentrated dose of the active ingredients in cilantro. And so it just wrecked her for the next couple of days. Her digestive system was a mess. Not because cilantro oil is bad for you, but because there's the toxic buildup. And when you do detox, you have to be prepared for some of that. And so that's why I do recommend if you are planning to go through a detox, if you know you need to detox, you've gotten some of those heavy metals in your teeth, then, or you've gotten a lot of aluminum exposure, take our detox supplement. We've got a daily detox system. As with everything else, it's 15% off today. And it'll help to support your natural detoxification process. It's got activated charcoal in it. It's got a lot of fibers in there that help to bind to these toxins and help to regulate your digestive system as you're flushing it out so that you're not reabsorbing things and going through the symptoms of getting these high doses as it's coming out through your system. So don't just jump into a detox right away. I don't recommend cleanses in general, just because unless this is doctor supported and someone's holding your hand through it, it can actually induce a highly toxic response. But if you eat good foods and you do it the right way and you're not reintroducing yourself to toxic exposures, like you cut out the aluminum pans and the antiperspirants, and you cut back on the flu shot and these other things that are introducing heavy metals into your system, then you will naturally detoxify from things that your body doesn't want inside of it. Natural. And so just support yourself through that. And then we also need oxygen. We need that exercise. Movement is life. Exercise is essential. If you're not exercising, start exercising more. And if you're to look at my chart of how I did over the last 21 days, I didn't do awesome with this, but I got at least 3 days a week where I dedicated time to exercise. It was only about 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be more. But I dedicated 15 minutes, 3 days a week to actively move. And I still lost 5 pounds and 3% body fat. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be hard. If you want to do more, you can. You can get points every single day for doing more. I've got tons of opportunities for that. But really, the most efficient and effective way I've found for anyone to work out, whether you're an Olympic athlete or a grandmother, is the Max T3 system. And it's just 12 minutes a day of high intensity interval training. And so we want to keep moving through that. So there's a whole gut health perspective. If you want a printout of that, you can get one, but it kind of walks you through each category here of things that we've talked about in the way that we address it, and some of the supplements are listed out in the back. If you want one of those, just ask at the front on your way out. But this is the action plan. This is what the challenge looks like. So we've got one of these printed out, or we're going to tonight if we haven't already. And it lists out every single category. And you can see here, mindset is at the very top. It makes up about 7 points that you can have on a day. And I struggled the most in this section because mindset is the hardest thing to control. Controlling your mind, you can control a man's mind, you control his entire destiny. But it breaks it down. Affirmations, those positive messages that you tell yourself. If you actively take time out every single day and do it, there's a point. Scripture reading, taking time and getting in God's word every single day, there's a point. Meditation, spending time meditating on God's word. What you just read, there's another point. Prayer, just 5 minutes. That's a point. Some of you, this stuff is already easy. You're already doing a lot of this. Phone detox, 15 minutes in the morning. I know first thing, my alarm clock is my phone. So first thing I do is pick up my phone and look at it. I failed at this regularly. But do it. Just don't look at your phone for 15 minutes. There's a point. Last thing at night, turn your phone off 30 minutes before you go to bed. Don't look at it anymore. It's done. It's off. You can't check your email in the middle of the night, but that's worth the point. And then read 30 minutes for self-development. Just something. You can even do audiobooks, but do something. That's a point. Nerve system. Your adjustment counts as a point. So I'm incentivizing you to come for adjustments, right? Wobble exercise. That's a point. Traction is a point. Your isometric exercises are a point. Wedges, just laying on those is a point. Your sleeping rolls, getting on those every night, that's a point. Weights, putting your weights on every day, that's a point. Then for nutrition, you get 2 points if you eat an advanced plan breakfast. You get 1 point if you eat a core plan breakfast. 2 points if you eat an advanced plan lunch, 1 point if you get a core plan lunch. If you eat an advanced plan snack in the middle of the day, that's worth a point. Core plan snacks don't really count because it's not doing you much, it's just filling your belly. Advanced plan dinner, 2 points. Core plan dinner, 1 point. Your daily essentials, that's the daily essential supplements. If you take that packet, that's a point. If you do a scoop of the perfect protein, whether that's the whey or the Pure Path or the plant protein, that's worth a point. If you do a scoop of the max greens, that's also a point. Why do I incentivize the max greens? Because I know y'all ain't getting salads. It's 2 to 4 servings in a scoop of the max greens, so that gets you there. We want you to get in 5 or more. Exercise. I only want you to do no more than 2 of these on a given day. I know some of you are going to do more because you're just active like that, but water is in this category. Why? Because when you exercise, you need more water, but I want you to aim for half your body weight in ounces of water. If you hit that, that's a point for the day. Max T3, if you do one of those workouts, that's a point for the day. That's just 12 minutes. If you do a workout that actually you sweat during, and it's at least 20 to 30 minutes, that's a point. And then if you do yoga, or we can say Tai Chi or Tai Bo or something along those lines, and it makes you break a sweat for more than 20 minutes, it's a slower movement, more flexibility and balance, then it counts as a point. Easy way to get that sweat, just do it at HotWorks. You'll get that real fast. Or do it outside. That'll do it for you too. Detox. So 3 different things here. So in these other categories, the spreadsheet I built actually has formulas built into it, and it'll account for everything. This one it's harder to say exactly what you're going to do with it because there's not anything that there's no limits to this. So I've got in here a healthy swap. A healthy swap is taking a beauty product that we know isn't good for you. And how do you find out if it's not good for you? Go to ewg.org and just look up the product. It'll tell you on a scale of 0 to 10 how toxic it is. If it's not good for you, it'll be closer to 10. If it is good for you, it'll be closer to 0. And so if you move up that scale with a beauty product, you can score a lot of points, depending on how many beauty products you're replacing. Gentlemen, I'm sorry, we only have 3 or 4 to replace. Females, I know that's limitless for you, right? Yeah, my beauty counter and beauty cabinet don't look anywhere near the same as my wife's. It's completely different. She has to put in so much more work than I do. And I tell her she doesn't have to. She looks great just the way she is. She just doesn't like to go out in public with that. Then a really big one here is a water filtration system. So if you have a water filtration system, great. Just change the filter. That's worth 30 points. I gave it that much because I know it can be a really expensive change. But if you're making that change, it needs to happen usually once or twice a year anyways. You get those 30 points. when you do that. I don't expect you to do that every day. I don't want you to do that every day. But if you have to change a couple of them, there's a couple opportunities for that. And then the detoxification system, if you feel like you need that as part of the challenge to support not going into a symptomatic place as some of those toxins hit your system, if you take that on a daily basis, that's a point that you can earn every single day. So again, I said that's over 400 points that you can possibly earn. I scored around 300. What was the final tally? Do we have those numbers for the four of us?
Well, it locked. It wouldn't let me find it this weekend.
Yeah, locked her out.
You had 344.
344. Okay.
April had 317. You had 309.
Plus whatever you did this weekend. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we all scored around 300. So there's your benchmark. We're not setting the bar too low, right? Nobody's just eating grains and drinking dairy and having your sweets and desserts. But I would love for everyone to do this. I would love for it to be a tie, so I have to buy, a couple different ninjas for you guys. But yeah, it's going to be a really good challenge. And then we're at the end of this month, we're going to celebrate it. And I believe it's what month are we in? July going into August. So August 24th, is that the day we picked? Monday, August 24th, we're going to celebrate with a recipe night. And it's going to be fun. I won't talk as much as I did tonight. I already went way longer than we had planned on. But what we're going to do is we're just going to share recipes. We'll assign them so there aren't any duplicates or anything. But August 24th, we're just going to bring recipes and we're going to try each other's stuff out. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And so that's going to be very hard to do over Facebook or YouTube. So plan ahead August 24th to join us for that, and we'll do that. So that's an upcoming event. And then be on the lookout. We are bringing back Women, Wine, and Wellness. And I'm also working on planning out Beers, Bros, and Barbecue. So if you're a guy, you can come out. I need help planning it, though, because there's no other men on staff. So if you want to be a part of something like that, we'll go ahead and put that together. But those are coming up on the calendar. The big one, though, is August 24th, Monday night, about a month from now. So that's 4 weeks from now is what that's going to be. So we start the challenge Sunday. I'm going to keep going with the challenge. I might not track it, though, until we start on Sunday evening of this